Chained in Velvet. Chapter 1, The Man Who Wasn't Supposed to Be There. Eastmoor Academy was a palace of secrets and silence, nestled among centuries-old oaks that whispered ancient truths in the cool breeze. Its sprawling stone facade gleamed under the pale morning sun, a monument to tradition, power, and privilege. The school year had just begun, but the usual hum of quiet excitement was pierced by a ripple of tension. Something was different. Something dangerous. They called him Mr. Lorcan Vale. No one knew exactly where he came from. Not really. He appeared in the faculty lounge that morning as if summoned by destiny itself, black suit tailored like armor, his presence folding the room into stillness. His dark eyes cut through the chatter like a knife. His smile was rare and dangerous, a thin curve promising both delight and disaster. When the headmistress introduced him, the room watched in muted awe. "This is Mr. Vale. He'll be your new senior philosophy teacher. I trust you'll make him welcome." But no one did. Not really. Elira Moreau slouched at the back of the classroom, her boots propped on the cold oak desk, a red pen idly tapping her notebook filled with cynical doodles and sharp annotations. Her flame-red hair was wild, rebellious, as untamed as her spirit. She hated being told what to think, and this new teacher smelled like trouble. Sharp-edged trouble. When Lorcan entered, the room sucked in its breath. He scanned the students slowly. His gaze was like velvet over steel, and when it landed on Elira, a flicker of something unreadable crossed his face. She didn't look away. Instead, she smirked. He cleared his throat and spoke. His voice was deep and calm, like a storm gathering behind silk curtains. "Philosophy is the study of truth, beauty, and morality. But more importantly, it's about power, the power to define reality." Elira raised a brow. "Or the power to lie about it." The class gasped. Lorcan's eyes narrowed, just slightly. But it was enough. "Miss Moreau," he said, voice dipped in amused challenge, "your attitude will either destroy you, or make you unforgettable." She folded her arms. "I'm already unforgettable." A smirk tugged at his lips. "We shall see." That was the beginning of their war. Day after day, class after class, they clashed in wit, sarcasm, and dangerous glances. He teased her mercilessly, calling her the wildfire that won't be tamed. She fought back with sharp words and defiance that made him want to both crush and protect her. Neither wanted to admit it, but they were hooked. At night, in the cavernous mansion where Lorcan lived, his mind replayed her laughter, the fire in her eyes. He told himself she was a distraction, a mission risk. But deep down, he knew she was something more. And so the game began. Chapter 2, The Thorn in His Side. The first few weeks at Eastmoor Academy were a whirlwind, but to Lorcan Vale, every moment was calculated. Each student was a chess piece, each lesson a strategic move. Except for one, Elira Moreau. She was a thorn in his side, wild, unpredictable, and dangerously clever. He tried to keep her at arm's length, but every time she opened her mouth, the carefully constructed walls around his heart trembled. She questioned him in front of the class, laughed at his carefully chosen words, and refused to play the game. On a rainy Thursday afternoon, the philosophy classroom was heavy with tension. The storm outside drummed a relentless rhythm against the stained glass windows, matching the pounding in Lorcan's chest every time Elira spoke. "If morality is relative," she challenged, voice clear and unwavering, "then what stops people from doing whatever they want? From hurting others without consequence?" Lorcan's gaze locked onto hers. "The threat of power, Miss Moreau. Power that enforces rules. Punishes disobedience. Maintains control." She smirked. "Or fear." A murmur rippled through the class. He stepped forward, folding his arms, his voice lowering into a dangerous whisper. "You seem comfortable playing with fire. But fires burn everything around them, including the one who holds the match." Elira met his gaze, unwavering. "Maybe I'm ready to get burned." The rest of the day was a blur for Lorcan. His mind was a storm of frustration and fascination. She irritated him to no end, yet in a way no one else ever had. He was drawn to her like a moth to flame, a flame that refused to be tamed. At night, alone in his study, Lorcan poured himself a glass of whiskey, swirling the amber liquid and thinking about her defiance. She wasn't like the others who fell for his charm or feared his power. She challenged him, and that was dangerous. Meanwhile, Elira wasn't oblivious to the way Lorcan watched her. She saw it in his eyes during class, the subtle shifts when their gazes met. But she refused to give him the satisfaction of knowing she noticed. She had her own secrets, things she didn't share with anyone. Her mother's warnings, the scars hidden beneath her sleeves, the whispered threats that lingered just beyond the walls of Eastmoor. And Lorcan? He was just another puzzle she wasn't sure she wanted to solve. Days passed, each encounter between them a battle of wits and wills. The other students watched in fascination, whispering about the tension that crackled whenever they were near. Lorcan's reputation grew, not just as the brilliant new teacher but as the most enigmatic man in the school. Elira, however, remained unimpressed. She didn't care about popularity, about power, or the dangerous allure of the man who seemed to rule the halls with a silent iron fist. She just wanted to survive the year. And maybe, just maybe, find out what lurked behind those gray eyes that saw right through her. That night, as the storm outside softened into a quiet drizzle, Lorcan stood by the floor-to-ceiling window of his mansion, looking out at the world that didn't know his true name or the lengths he'd go to protect his secrets. And somewhere deep inside, a small, unfamiliar voice whispered his name. Chapter 3: Secrets Behind Locked Doors. The school was quiet at night, the kind of quiet that only comes when everyone else has gone to sleep, leaving behind empty halls and whispered memories. Elira wasn't supposed to be here. She wasn't supposed to be anywhere near the old staff wing, the part of Eastmoor Academy left to rot in rumors. But curiosity, something fierce and reckless, pulled her toward the shadows. The night air was thick with moisture and mystery as she crept down the cracked marble hallway. The dim light from flickering sconces cast ghostly shapes on the peeling walls. Somewhere, a door creaked in protest, and her heart jumped. She paused at a heavy oak door, heart pounding in a rhythm that was almost a warning. This was the part of the school no student was meant to see. A place where secrets were buried beneath dust and decay. She'd been watching Mr. Vale, learning his rhythms, his habits, and something didn't add up. Taking a deep breath, Elira turned the cold brass handle and slipped inside. The room was a forgotten archive, filled with crates stamped with foreign letters, old maps folded and yellowed, and papers stacked in chaotic piles. A soft click behind her. She froze. "Not quite the ghost you thought I was," a voice said, low and cold. Lorcan stepped from the shadows, the flicker of candlelight catching the sharp lines of his face. "Why are you here?" he demanded, eyes dark as storm clouds. Elira's pulse pounded in her ears, but she squared her shoulders. "I don't like secrets," she said. "Especially when they involve me." Lorcan's gaze hardened. For a moment, the man was a wall of ice and steel. Then, something broke in his expression. "Some secrets aren't for the faint-hearted." Elira's fingers clenched into fists. "Well, I'm not faint-hearted." She stepped closer, into the dim glow of candlelight, and saw the flash of something buried deep inside him, pain, fear, maybe regret. "I'm not who you think I am," he said quietly. "Not the teacher. Not the man you think you're fighting. And what are you then?" Her voice was steady despite the adrenaline rushing through her veins. Lorcan looked away, the tension in his jaw palpable. "I'm someone who can't afford to lose you." The words hung heavy between them. Elira's breath hitched. She wanted to run. She wanted to fight. But most of all, she wanted answers. Days turned into nights filled with whispered conversations and stolen moments. Lorcan showed her glimpses of a life lived in shadows. Of enemies hidden behind smiles, of battles fought in boardrooms and back alleys. And Elira, the girl who refused to be tamed, found herself trapped in a world far darker and more dangerous than any philosophy debate. Yet, despite everything, the line between hate and something dangerously close to desire blurred. Their fights became charged with an electric current, every word a spark, every glance a challenge. And somewhere deep in the silence between them, a fragile connection began to form. Chapter 4, Rejection Hurts Rich Men Too. Rain blurred the windows of Eastmoor Academy like tears on old glass. It was one of those early autumn days when the cold sunk into your bones and memory felt heavier than usual. Elira sat in the back of Lorcan Vale's classroom, arms folded across her chest, jaw clenched. She didn't look at him once. Not when he started the lecture. Not when he paced beside her desk. Not even when his voice dipped into that velvet baritone that always seemed to scrape her nerves raw. She was angry. Not confused. Not curious. Not intrigued. Angry. And Lorcan hated that. Not because she was defiant, he liked that. Not because she was cold, he could melt her again, he was sure. But because this time, she didn't care. The day before, she'd confronted him. In the abandoned archives, with his secrets still flickering in her mind like a fire she couldn't put out. "I don't trust you," she'd said. "Good," he'd replied. "Trust gets people killed." And this, she'd gestured between them, furious, heart pounding. "What is this, Mr. Vale? Some twisted game for your ego?" Lorcan's jaw flexed, and for the first time, he looked almost human. "This is the first thing I've felt in a very long time." "I don't care," she snapped. "You don't get to play savior and stalker. I don't want this. I don't want you." And she'd walked out. Now, in class, Lorcan couldn't stop watching her. She was different today. Closed off. Guarded. Her usual biting wit had been replaced with a silence that cut deeper. And it made him desperate. When the bell rang, students filed out with relieved murmurs, their eyes darting between the two of them. Rumors had started already. They always did. But Lorcan didn't care. He waited until the last one left, then shut the door. "Elira." She didn't look up. "Elira," he said again, voice lower. "Don't," she said. "Just don't." He walked slowly toward her, tension coiled tight in every muscle. "You don't get to pretend there's nothing between us. Not after what you saw. Not after what you felt. It was a mistake." "Then why do you look like you're still burning?" She stood up sharply, her chair scraping the floor. "Because I am," she hissed. "And it's your fault. You lit something I never asked for." Lorcan stared at her, eyes stormy. "You think I planned this?" he said, voice shaking. "You think I wanted you to be the one who saw behind the mask? That I wanted to lose control over you?" "Lose control?" she laughed bitterly. "You think this is about control? You've been trying to own me since the second I stepped into this room." She was right. And that made him dangerous. He stepped closer. She stepped back. He stopped. "You said you didn't want me," he said quietly. "I meant it." "Say it again," he said. "I don't want you." Louder. She glared at him. "I don't want you." Silence. And in that silence, Lorcan Vale broke a little. He didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stood there with his walls caving in and his breath unsteady. She turned to leave. He didn't stop her. This time. That night, he sat alone in his mansion, the lights off, the rain a whisper against glass. No plans. No files. No war maps of rival empires or encrypted drives. Just her name echoing in his head like a curse. Elira. 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 But obsession doesn't die with rejection. It festers. And Lorcan Vale was not a man who let go. Not when he'd already decided she was his. Chapter 5, Green-Eyed Monsters Wear Velvet. The first time Rowan Vance walked into Eastmoor Academy, Elira noticed him. Not because he was handsome, though he was. Not because he had a laugh like summer and eyes the color of sky right before a thunderstorm, though he did. but because he was normal. Kind. Uncomplicated. Everything Lorcan Vale was not. Rowan transferred in midterm. His father, a diplomat. His mother, dead. His presence, smooth and unassuming. He blended easily with the others, slipping into their ranks with practiced ease, the kind of boy who was too charming to be real, but Elira could tell he was. He smiled at everyone, but he looked at her. Really looked. Like he wanted to understand her. Not control her. Not manipulate. Not tear her apart and stitch her back into something broken. Just understand. And it terrified her. Because understanding was more dangerous than obsession. New guy's got a thing for you, whispered Isla, her roommate, while brushing her teeth that morning. I don't care, Elira muttered. But she did. Lorcan noticed him on the first day, too. He watched the boy from behind his desk, gaze flicking over Rowan's transferred file. Excellent grades. Clean record. Team sports. Community service. Boring. Perfect. Dangerous. Lorcan closed the file. Then watched Elira walk past his window with Rowan by her side, laughing at something he said. His jaw clenched so tightly it cracked. In class, he watched her differently. Not because he wanted to. Because he had to. Because Rowan sat beside her now. Passed her notes. Brushed her hand. Stared too long when she spoke. Because Elira smiled at him. And Lorcan wanted to destroy every cell in that boy's body. That Friday, after class, Lorcan locked the door as Elira tried to leave. She turned, arms crossed. Again? He said nothing. Just looked at her. And then, suddenly, he was across the room. I don't like him. Who? You know who. Oh, she said, smirking. You mean Rowan? He said nothing. You don't get to be jealous. I'm not jealous, he growled. You're furious. He stepped closer, voice low. You're mine. I'm not yours, Mr. Vale. You don't belong to him. I don't belong to anyone. He grabbed her wrist, not hard, just enough. And then, he let go. Just as fast, and stepped back, breathing hard. She stared at him. You don't scare me, she said. You should. That night, Elira found a note in her dorm. No name. No handwriting. Just a single sentence in black ink. He's not who you think he is. She crumpled it and threw it out. But she didn't sleep. Meanwhile, Lorcan sat in his private room, watching Eastmoor's security footage on a bank of hidden monitors. One screen showed Rowan and Elira walking the courtyard. Another showed her pausing at her locker, brushing her hair back, smiling at something Rowan said. And Lorcan, unblinking, tense, furious, watched her like a man trying not to drown in his own obsession. He clenched his jaw. She had rejected him. But she wasn't done with him. He'd make sure of it. Chapter 6. A game of traps and lies. The autumn festival at Eastmoor was supposed to be harmless. Pumpkin lanterns, hay bales, music, and laughter echoing through the courtyards. Students bundled in sweaters, cider cups in hand, flushed with youth and sugar. But for Lorcan Vale, it was war. A battlefield wrapped in golden lights and false innocence. Because Rowan Vance had asked Elira to go with him. And she'd said yes. She wore a black dress, simple, long-sleeved, velvet at the collar. Her hair loose. Her cheeks pink from the cold. She looked untouchable. And yet Rowan touched her, lightly, laughing as he handed her a caramel apple. They stood by the fountain, her mouth curved into a rare smile. Lorcan watched from the window of the faculty building. Every part of him was ice. Every part of him was burning. He knew he should walk away. Let her go. Let her choose the boy with the soft eyes and normal heart. But he couldn't. Because when she smiled at Rowan, something in Lorcan's chest cracked. He didn't realize his hand was bleeding until the broken crystal tumbler slipped from his grip, shattering on the polished wood floor. That night, he followed her. Not like a man. Like a predator. She left the festival late, cheeks still pink, cider still warm in her belly. She didn't notice him in the shadows, trailing behind her through the old wing of the school, the one students were told to avoid after dark. When she paused at the hallway that led to the dorms, Lorcan made a choice. He didn't let her walk away. He caught her wrist, pulling her backward into the dark. "Let me go," she snapped, struggling against him. "Not tonight," he said, voice rough. "Not when you let him touch you." He dragged her down a corridor students weren't meant to see. The walls were stone, cold and secret. He opened a door with a key no one else possessed. Inside, a hidden room, quiet and candlelit, lined with books, maps, and something darker, velvet ropes, a desk, a hidden bed behind a screen. Elira's eyes widened. "You've been watching me." "Yes. You followed me. Every night." "You're insane." "I'm in love." She tried to run. He caught her. She slapped him. He didn't flinch. "You don't get to do this," she hissed. "You can't lock me in here like some pet, some prisoner." "I already have." He stepped closer. She backed into the wall. "I don't want you," she spat. He leaned in, eyes dark. "But I want you." What happened next wasn't gentle. It wasn't kind. It was obsession. Heat. Hunger. The kind that couldn't be undone once it was unleashed. And though Elira pushed and protested, part of her trembled for reasons she couldn't name. Not fear. But fury. And something worse, fascination. When he finally stepped back, breath ragged, he didn't apologize. "I warned you," he whispered, tracing her collarbone. "I'm not like him. I don't stop." She slapped him again. Harder. His lip bled. He smiled. "I hate you," she said. "Good," he replied. "I hate how much I need you." He left her in the hidden room that night. Locked. Alone. Her heart pounding. Her limbs trembling. Her head spinning with everything she didn't want to feel. She didn't cry. But she didn't sleep either. And somewhere in the dark, behind hidden cameras and whispered threats, Lorcan Vale sat alone, watching her on a screen. Still burning. Still his. Chapter 7, The Taste of Rebellion. Elira had counted the hours. 13 of them since Lorcan locked her in this room beneath Eastmoor's bones, his hidden lair, part study, part sanctum, part trap. She hadn't screamed. She hadn't begged. She'd waited. Observed. Memorized. She knew his scent now, smoke and expensive bourbon, cedarwood and something darker. She knew the way his hands lingered, how his eyes burned, how his voice could turn soft like velvet and hard like iron in a breath. She knew that when he walked in again, it would not be to apologize. The door creaked open at precisely midnight. Of course it did. He was too methodical to arrive without precision. Lorcan stepped into the room wearing all black, unbuttoned at the collar, hair tousled like he'd run his hands through it too many times. "Did you sleep?" he asked. Elira sat on the velvet settee near the bookshelf, arms folded. "Do you think I could?" He closed the door behind him. "Good. I didn't want you rested. I wanted you real." She glared. "You wanted me trapped." His gaze dropped, briefly, to her lips. "I wanted you close." Silence settled like a second skin. She stood slowly, deliberately, not giving him the satisfaction of flinching. She moved toward him, until only inches stood between them. "You want to control me," she said. "I want to own you," he replied. His voice was low, unapologetic, raw. "And what will you do when I break every chain you put on me?" He didn't answer with words. He reached for her. But this time, she didn't push him away. Their mouths met in a storm of heat and defiance. It wasn't gentle. It was clashing wills, devouring pride. Teeth scraped, fingers fisted hair, lips bruised. She kissed him to punish him. He kissed her like she was already his. Her nails raked down his shirt, and he let her tear it open, exposing the smooth, sculpted lines of his chest. She wasn't gentle. She didn't pretend to be curious. She was hungry, furious, wired with adrenaline and rage. And when he pulled her tighter, breath ragged, she bit his lip again, hard. He growled low in his throat. "Say it," he demanded between kisses. "Say you want me." She yanked his face closer, locking eyes. "I want to ruin you." His grin was feral. "Try." Clothes came undone. Control frayed. But even in the haze of heat and want, he paused, hands still on her waist, head bowed against her shoulder. "Elira," he murmured. "Tell me now." She hesitated, then whispered, "I want this." And then she let go. What followed was a blur of velvet ropes and dominance laced with worship, restraint that felt more like possession than punishment. He didn't rush. He made her feel every second of his hunger, dragging it out like a man savoring his last taste of heaven before falling. And Elira, stubborn, headstrong, impossible Elira, gave him hell. Later, tangled in silk sheets and breathless silence, she lay beside him. Lorcan's fingers traced circles on her bare shoulder. "Rowan wouldn't have touched you like that," he said quietly. "No," she murmured. "He wouldn't." A pause. "But I wasn't made for softness." He turned to face her, something almost terrified in his eyes. "I'll never be gentle, Elira." "Then don't be." She fell asleep in his arms that night, not because she trusted him, but because she wanted to understand the monster before she killed him. Chapter 8, A Good Man's War. Rowan Vance was the kind of boy who didn't believe in monsters. Not until he met Lorcan Vale. And not until he noticed the bruises on Elira's wrists. Faint. Barely there. A ghost of pressure left behind. But Rowan saw them. And he saw the shadows in her eyes. "Elira," he asked her quietly that morning, "are you okay?" She blinked. A pause. Too long. "I'm fine," she said. But her smile didn't reach her eyes. And she didn't meet his gaze. That night, Rowan broke the rules. He stayed after hours. He picked the lock on the faculty lounge. He accessed the internal system and found the name Vale attached to areas of the school no other teacher had clearance for. One of them was labeled Wing D, Sub-Basement 2. A restricted zone. A place Elira had disappeared to just days earlier. He didn't sleep. He planned. Meanwhile, across campus, Lorcan Vale watched Elira sleep in his bed, tangled in black silk, skin bare beneath his sheets, her expression softer than he'd ever seen it. He didn't deserve her like this. But he couldn't give her up. She stirred sometime before dawn. His voice was a rasp in the dark. "You're still here." "I know," she whispered. A beat passed. "You could have left." "I know that too." She turned over to face him. "You scare me." His chest tightened. "I know. But I'm still here." He closed his eyes. And that single sentence did more damage than every rejection that came before it. Later that day, Rowan cornered Elira near the library. "I need to talk to you," he said, his voice urgent. She hesitated. "Rowan, is he hurting you?" Her breath caught. "Tell me the truth. Please." Elira didn't answer. And silence, her silence, was the loudest confirmation he'd ever heard. That evening, Rowan broke into the restricted wing. He found the hidden room. The velvet ropes. The bed. The cameras. The books. And the photos, dozens of them, of Elira, captured in secret. Some candid. Some sleeping. Some walking, laughing, angry. All watched. All studied. Like prey. Like obsession. Lorcan found him minutes later. Their confrontation was silent at first. Until Rowan turned, trembling with fury, and said, "You're sick." Lorcan's gaze darkened. "And yet she stays. Because she's afraid. Because she wants this." "You don't love her." Lorcan took a step forward. "I would burn this entire world to keep her." They fought. Not like schoolboys. Like men who knew that the girl standing between them would choose one, and destroy the other. When Elira arrived, breathless, heart-pounding, a knife hidden in her coat pocket just in case, she found blood on the floor and Rowan with a split lip. Lorcan stood over him, chest heaving. "Elira," Rowan said, eyes pleading. "You can't stay with him. He's not stable. He's dangerous." She looked between them. At Rowan, the boy who represented everything she should want. And at Lorcan, the man who represented everything she couldn't resist. She stepped toward Rowan. Then past him. And placed her hand in Lorcan's. Rowan staggered to his feet. His voice cracked. "You'll regret it." Elira looked at him one last time. "I already do." When the door closed behind them, Lorcan leaned into her ear. "You chose me. I didn't say it was the right choice." He smirked, bloody and wild. "But you made it anyway." Chapter 9, The Cage You Carved Yourself. It started with a letter. No words. Just a plain ticket tucked between the pages of her dog-eared poetry book. A one-way escape out of Eastmoor. Out of Lorcan Vale's shadows. Out of everything she was becoming beneath his touch. Elira had always been clever. But clever girls forget that obsessive men don't just let go. She left at dawn. Bag packed. Heart hammering. No note. No second thought. Lorcan was still asleep when she slipped out of bed, wrapped only in his oversized black shirt, the one he'd never let her keep. She left it on the floor. A statement. A goodbye. She made it as far as the train station. Ticket in hand. Sunlight on her skin. Freedom brushing the edge of her mouth. And then, the world went dark. She woke to the scent of velvet and bourbon. Her wrists, bound in soft leather. Her ankles, too. The ceiling above her was familiar. Vaulted. Lit with candlelight. She was back in his lair. Not locked. Not bruised. Not hurt. Just, trapped. Again. "You left me." Lorcan's voice came from the shadows. Calm. Flat. Deadly. She turned her head slowly. He sat in the armchair near the fireplace, still in the white shirt she'd seen him wear last. Blood stained the cuff. But not his own. "Where's Rowan?" she asked, heart like ice. "Alive," Lorcan said, staring into the flames. "Barely. You followed me. I warned you. You kidnapped me. I reclaimed you." Elira struggled against the cuffs. "This isn't love." "No," he agreed, rising slowly. "It's need. And it's permanent." He walked toward her. Slowly. Like a storm circling. She glared. "Do it, then. Hurt me. That's what you want, isn't it?" Lorcan stopped inches from the bed, his eyes wild. "No," he whispered. "I want to keep you." She turned her face away. "I'll never love you." "I know," he said. And for the first time, he looked wrecked. Not angry. Not powerful. Just broken. He climbed onto the bed beside her, fully clothed, silent, raw. Then he unfastened her cuffs. One. By. One. And laid down beside her without touching her. "If you want to run," he whispered, "the door's unlocked. But if you leave me again, Elira," his breath caught. "I won't survive it." She didn't move. Not because she believed him. Not because she forgave him, but because something in his voice sounded like a scream he couldn't let out. And something in her chest ached at the thought of him silenced. That night, she curled up beside him on the velvet bed. Not prisoner. Not lover. Something in between. And for the first time, she whispered the truth into his chest, I don't know how to hate you anymore. He didn't reply. But the way he pulled her into his arms said everything. Chapter 10, A Ruin Worth Worshipping. Lorcan didn't sleep anymore. Not really. He watched her instead, the way she breathed, the way her brow furrowed in dreams, the way her fingers twitched against the sheets like she was trying to fight even in sleep. She had been with him a week. Since the escape. Since the return. She hadn't tried to run again. But she hadn't forgiven him either. Not out loud. Not in the way that mattered. Tell me something, she said one morning, sitting cross-legged on the edge of his bed, bare-legged, wearing one of his white dress shirts with 3 buttons undone, an accidental vision of destruction. What? He asked, handing her a steaming cup of black coffee. She didn't take it. Just looked at him. Who were you before all this? He froze. No one had ever asked him that. Not even himself. He sat across from her, coffee forgotten. I was a child who learned too early that love makes you weak. And now? I think it makes you lethal. She tilted her head. That's not love, Lorcan. It is if I'd kill for it. She flinched. But she didn't leave. They began playing chess at night. She would beat him once every 4 games, and when she did, she demanded things. Take off your shirt. Tell me your real name. Show me the tattoo on your spine. Tell me what your father did to you. He answered everything. Sometimes with words. Sometimes with silence that made her breath catch. One night, she asked, have you ever loved anyone before me? He didn't blink. No, why me? I don't know. You do. He met her eyes. You looked at me like you saw everything and still didn't want it. That was the night she kissed him first. Not in anger. Not to dominate. Not to confuse. But to say, I'm still here. It was the beginning of the unraveling. They started to move through the space like 2 magnets, always circling, always colliding. The house became less a prison and more a battleground of stolen touches and too long glances. He would press her against a wall just to see if she'd melt or slap him. She would brush against his chest like she didn't notice the effect she had. They were fire and gasoline in slow motion. One night, it went too far. He kissed her in the library. She kissed back. And when she tugged him by the collar, he pressed her to the velvet chaise and pinned her wrists beside her head, just like she liked it now. Their mouths met like they'd waited centuries. Clothes fell. Breath hitched. But when he paused to ask, always asking now, she shocked him. She said, I want you to make it hurt. He stared. And whispered, not until I make it feel good first. And he did. All night. Worshipping her like the chaos she was. The chaos he chose. Afterward, her fingers traced the scar on his ribs. He let her. No mask. No smirk. Just Lorcan, ruined and undone. She whispered into the hollow of his throat, you scare me the most when you're gentle. He held her tighter. I'm only gentle with the things I plan to keep. Days passed. Nights bled into mornings. Rowan didn't call again. No one searched for her. The world forgot her. But Lorcan never would. Then came the rainstorm. Thunder cracked the sky in half. The power blinked out. And in the dark, he whispered, if you told me to let you go, I would. She didn't answer right away. When she did, it was a confession wrapped in surrender. I think I'd come back anyway. Chapter 11, Blood Beneath the Silk. They say the truth always comes out. They never say what it does when it finally does. It started with a knock. Firm. Rhythmic. Official. Lorcan was in the study when the door thundered. Elira was in his lap, laughing at something he'd said, her smile rare and raw and real. Then the knock came again. And everything shattered. He stood. "Go to the cellar," he said. "Don't come out until I come for you." Elira froze. "Lorcan, please. Just this once." He'd never begged before. Not even when he was dying inside. She obeyed. She always did now. Not because she feared him. But because somehow, somewhere along the way, she trusted him. The door opened to 5 officers. And Rowan. Blood still crusted on his temple. Eyes filled with purpose. "She's here," Rowan said coldly. "I know she is." Lorcan didn't flinch. "You brought the law. Brave. Tell them what you did." "I did nothing without her consent." "You kidnapped her." "She came back willingly." "She's 18, Vale. That doesn't make this less criminal." "I'm aware." Lorcan stepped back. "I won't resist." They cuffed him. Dragged him into the pouring rain. As they shoved him into the back of the cruiser, he looked back, once. Hoping. And there she was. Barefoot. Soaked. Eyes wide. She didn't speak. But her expression said everything. "Don't do this. Come back. Please." They booked him under his real name, Laziel Vale. Charges: abduction, assault, trespassing, unauthorized access, abuse of position, destruction of private property. The world, the one outside velvet and sin, came crashing down. News broke within hours. Scandal at Eastmoor, beloved professor revealed to be fraud. Elira Caelis, the girl at the center of the mystery. Cult or love story? Public divided over Vale case. Elira refused to speak to the press. She disappeared again. But this time, not into his lair. She ran into the city, into obscurity, into shadows that felt too quiet without his voice chasing her. The trial date was set. And when Lorcan stood before the court in a black suit, hair swept back, jaw clenched, he looked straight ahead. But when he saw her enter the courtroom, everything in him broke. She took the stand. The judge asked, "Were you held against your will?" "No." "Did you attempt to leave?" "Yes." "Were you physically restrained?" "Once." "Did Mr. Vale ever hurt you?" Elira hesitated. Then said, "Not in the way you mean." The room fell silent. The prosecutor leaned forward. "Miss Caelis, are you in love with the defendant?" Rowan shook his head from the gallery, eyes begging her not to. But Elira didn't look at him. She looked at Lorcan. And said, "Yes." Gasps echoed. "But that doesn't make what happened right." Her voice cracked. "I hate that I love him. I hate that I miss him. I hate that part of me is still his. But I'm not a victim. And he's not a monster. Just a man who didn't know how to love gently." The judge was quiet for a long time. Then he ruled. Lorcan Vale was sentenced to 1 year in correctional custody, reduced for cooperation, no prior criminal record, and testimony from the victim. He didn't look relieved. He looked haunted. When they led him away in chains, he didn't resist. Didn't cry. Didn't beg. But he turned to Elira, once, and whispered, "I'd do it all again for you." 1 year later. Eastmoor burned down. A fire. Electrical. Mysterious. Some say it was lightning. Others say it was vengeance. Elira didn't care. She was waiting outside the prison gates that morning, coat wrapped around her like armor, a single red velvet ribbon in her pocket. When Lorcan stepped out, thinner, harder, older, she didn't smile. Just held out the ribbon. "Come home." He took it. And her hand. And finally, he smiled. Chapter 12, The Love We Bleed For. Final chapter. The cabin was built into the side of a mountain. Snow dusted the windows. A fire crackled low. And Elira stood barefoot in a silk slip, watching Lorcan lean over the kitchen counter, his sleeves rolled to his elbows, glasses on, hair tied back in a low knot. 1 year apart hadn't softened him. It had hardened him. His body was leaner. Sharper. But when he turned, and saw her watching him, really watching, his mouth parted like he still couldn't believe she was real. She walked toward him. And he didn't move. "You haven't touched me since we got here," she whispered. He watched her. "I thought I ruined that right." She lifted her chin. "You never took what I didn't give." His jaw tightened. "And if I give you everything now?" she asked, fingers curling into the fabric of his shirt. "What then?" "I'll worship you," he breathed. "Like I should have from the beginning." He didn't ask this time. She didn't run. When he kissed her, it wasn't violent or hungry. It was reverent. Like a prayer he'd been denied too long. They made love in the flickering light of the fire. Slow at first, as if rediscovering each other's skin. His hands mapped her body like he was rebuilding something ancient and holy. Elira gasped when his lips moved down her neck, across her collarbone, over her heart. "Say it," she whispered. "Say I'm yours." "You're mine," he murmured, voice cracking. "You've always been mine." She slid her fingers into his hair and pulled him closer, guiding him down her body. And when he kissed the inside of her thigh, she arched up and whispered, "Don't stop." He didn't. He devoured her. Every whimper. Every tremor. She cried out his name, and he smiled against her skin. "You taste like sin," he said. "And you?" she gasped, eyes wild. He kissed his way up her stomach. "I taste like the man who's never letting you go again." They didn't sleep that night. They broke each other open on every surface, the floor, the rug, the velvet chair by the window. He pulled her wrists above her head on instinct, then paused. Her eyes met his. "I want it," she whispered. Just like that. He bound her hands with the velvet ribbon she'd given him. Slowly. Tenderly. And when he took her again, it was rough, deep, desperate. But always with love. Afterward, she curled against his chest. "Do you still see me as your obsession?" she asked softly. "No," he whispered, brushing hair from her cheek. "You were never just an obsession." "Then what?" "You're the reason I survived myself." Snow fell outside the window. Inside, two broken people lay tangled in the firelight, finally unafraid of the dark. They didn't speak of the past anymore. Didn't need to. They had today. And tomorrow. And the kind of love no one understood, because it wasn't safe. It was fire. Velvet. Chains undone. Epilogue. 1 year later, they married in the forest with no guests, no rings, no witnesses. Just her in red silk, and him in black, and the sound of thunder in the distance. Lorcan whispered, "Say yes." Elira said, "I already did." He kissed her like he'd never known anything else. The end.